Hey everybody out there in the cyber world, this is Jillian Sidoti. I'm here with Anthony Chara, and we are going to be talking to you today about how you can get started today in investing in apartments. Anthony's going to focus on how to get into actually investing into apartments, and I'm going to tell you how to raise the money to get into apartment buildings. So we're just going to give you some basics here, and if you like what you hear, perhaps you can join us at one of our future events. So let's get started. Anthony, first, if you could tell us a little bit about why someone would want to invest in apartment buildings.
Great question, Jillian. And first off, hi everybody. It's Anthony Chara here, coming to you live via a recorded webinar. I always love doing live recorded webinars. It's an oxymoron. But anyhow, hey, why should you be investing in apartments? Because with the economy booming the way that it is, or starting to boom the way it is, now is the best time to be getting into apartments. As we come out of the Great Recession, vacancy rates are at an all-time low in a lot of markets around the country. And because of that, as you'll hear in a little bit, I'm going to talk about another strategy that you can use with your apartment buildings that will increase your net worth exponentially. And now's why you should be investing in apartment buildings. A lot of people do the little onesie-twosie things. They buy a house and flip it. They buy another house and flip it. Well, instead of doing one at a time, why not do 10 at a time or 20 at a time? And that's why I love apartment buildings, especially right now. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of areas around the country that are booming. A couple of the areas right now that are booming for apartments are places like Florida, Arizona, Nevada, and quite a few other areas around the country. So now's an awesome time for people to be getting in and thinking about investing in apartments.
I couldn't agree with you more. And Anthony, I'll tell you, I've seen so many investors. When I first started my practice, I was doing a lot of apartment syndications, and then it was very obvious that it slowed down, especially when the Great Recession hit. Now I'm seeing such an increase in apartment syndications here in my office, because I really do believe that people are finding that the opportunities in multifamily are there again, and they're just starting to come forth. So don't think that it's too late. This is the ground floor. You will get in on the ground floor if you start investing today. So tell us, Anthony, some of the basics about apartment investing. So if somebody here is listening who doesn't know anything about investing in apartments, maybe they've been doing single families, maybe they haven't invested in anything at all, and they want to get into apartment buildings. Tell us what some of the basics are that they need to know.
Well, one of the big misnomers that a lot of people have is that they don't understand how easy it actually is to get into apartment buildings. As I stated earlier, some people are just doing one single-family home here, one there. For basically just a little bit more effort, you can get into much larger buildings and do more units at a time. Is also the issue with the terminology. So the biggest thing that holds a lot of people back, actually there's two things that hold a lot of people back. Number one is they just don't understand apartments in general. So there's a lot of terminology that I teach my students. It's a little like learning a new language, where you talk about things like cap rate, which is short for capitalization rate. Well, once you understand the nuances of these different terms, it's much easier to make that transition from single-family homes into multi-units. So such as cap rate. Cap rate is basically the return you get on the property if you were to buy it all cash. So you might have heard of that term out there before, people talking about cap rate for an apartment building or a strip mall or a storage facility. All that means is, let's say you have a 10 cap rate property. It just means if you paid all cash for it, you'd get a 10% return over the course of a year. So if you paid $1 million for it, at the end of a year, you'd have $100,000 in your pocket after all of your other operating expenses were paid for. There's other things that you need to understand with apartments too, as far as financing. It can be a little bit more of a challenge to get into an apartment building, but there's also strategies and techniques that you can learn that make it just as easy to get into an apartment building as it does single-family homes. And those are just some of the things that I teach my students.
I love that it's just as easy to get into an apartment building as a single-family home. I'm actually looking forward to hearing what you have to say at our next event about that. I think pretty cool.
It is, and I think most people, they just put it in their mind, because I know I went through this myself years ago before I started doing apartment investing. Hey, I used to live in one about 30, 40 years ago. So, it never even crossed my mind back then that I could own an apartment building. But about 10 years ago, my mind shifted because all of a sudden I went out and I learned what I needed to learn about apartments. And because of that, it opened up my mind to the fact that it's like, wow, it's not that difficult at all to get into these. And right now I own over 1,300 units around the country.
1,300 units, that's amazing. That's really great. And you just started 10 years ago.
Well, yeah, I started learning about it 10 years ago. I actually started investing back in about 2004, so about 9 years ago, 9 years ago. And now we're up to 1,300 units, and that's adding some here and selling some there. So yeah, we're doing pretty good.
Excellent, excellent. So Anthony, so one of the questions I always get from investors is, where can you find a good apartment deal?
Well, quite frankly, there are good apartment deals everywhere. You just have to look for them and know where to find them, and that's one of the things that I talk about in my classes. I want people, and I'm going to talk about it on at our event on Saturday as well. It's one of those things where once you learn some of those different nuances about how to find the deals that are out there, you should have an endless supply being literally brought to you, where people are going to actually call you on the phone and bring the deals to you.
That's incredible. That's awesome. So can you tell us also, you had mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation, and we had talked about this, you and I, in a phone conversation about a week ago, about a forced appreciation and how you can create massive net worth almost immediately. Why don't you explain that to the folks out there listening now?
Oh, absolutely, Jillian. One of the biggest things that I love about apartment buildings is something called forced depreciation. You can't get this with a single-family home. And here's one example of what forced depreciation is. Apartments and commercial property are valued based on the income that they generate. On a single-family home, as an example, let's say you have a home, Jillian, and you're renting it for $500 a month, and you decide to raise the rent $10 a month, to $510. How much does that increase the value of that single-family home?
I was never good at math. That's not true, by the way, but I was just trying to be funny.
Yeah. And for those of us that know you, I'm laughing on the inside too, because I've seen the analyses and the documentation that you provide for your PPMs and operating agreements and stuff like that. So I know you're pulling my leg. But if you had a single family home and you increased the rent from $500 to $510 a month, how much would that raise the actual value of your property?
Well, I mean, if I was just going to say off the top of my head, I would say worth $10 a month. I don't think it would raise it by much. Would it really?
Well, on a single family home, it's not going to raise it at all. So that would be not much.
Okay.
But think about it this way. On an apartment building, let's say you have a 50-unit apartment building. Well, you have a 50-unit apartment building, and you decide to take everybody's rent from $500 to $510. Well, think about that. $10 a month times 50 units is $500 a month. Now, that doesn't seem like a whole lot. That's $500 a month, but that's also $500 extra cash flow every month in your pocket for a little $10 per month increase. But wait, there's more. Now, of course, you multiply that 500 times 12 months, and that's an extra $6,000 going into your pocket. Now, somebody might say, well, Anthony, if I had 50 single-family homes and I raised the rent $10 a month, I'd also put an extra $6,000 a month into my pocket. And I would say, you know what, that's absolutely correct. But here's where the difference is with apartments. Because of the term I talked about earlier when we started the recording back about cap rate, if you now take that increase of $6,000 a month and you divide it by the applicable cap rate for your type of building in that market, as an example, let's say it's a 10 cap rate market, so you divide your $6,000 by 10%, because that's what cap rate is, or 0.1, divide it by that, you just increased your net worth or the value of that property by $60,000.
Oh, wow.
You can't
That's great.
yeah, that's great. You can't do that with single-family homes, and that's based on just a whopping $10 a month increase. If you were in a better market, now 10% is actually a pretty high cap rate. Most metropolitan areas around the country, you're probably not going to be at a 10 cap. You might be at an 8 cap. Well, an 8 cap, now that may sound like that's worse because you dropped from a 10 to an 8, but when it comes to valuing a property, it's actually better because you take that same $6,000, you then divide it by 0.08 or 8%, and now you just increase the value of your property by $75,000 just by doing a whopping $10 a month increase. That's why I love apartment buildings.
Excellent, excellent. Well, here's the problem though, Anthony. Sometimes people don't have the money to buy apartment buildings, which is why I join you at your events to help tell people then how they get the money for apartment buildings. Now, I'm looking at a picture here. Anthony had previously sent me a bunch of pictures of his properties. We were talking, and I asked him to send me some pictures, and he sent me this beauty. Tell us a little bit about this property that you own.
Well, this particular property is actually one that we got rid of about 2 years ago. But one of the reasons I sent you this photo is because it was a place called Woodland Terrace in Shreveport. And the interesting part about this, and I know you're going to go into this in more detail, Jillian, about raising money. So I actually did 2 things on this one that I think everybody needs to understand. First off, there's a lot of people out there. We talked earlier about the basics and why people should be buying apartment buildings. Well, because it's easier than you think. Like in this particular case, this is, if I remember correctly, it was about 120 units or 140 unit property. And we didn't have to qualify for any loans. We didn't have to go out and get any financing. We didn't have to do anything like that on this particular property. We actually found an owner who had some issues with their property and they needed to do a substantial amount of rehab work. So what I did with a couple of my students is we went out and we raised $300,000 to put that money into this building to help the current owner rehab the property and then turn around and sell it down the road. So because we found this great opportunity, we didn't have to worry about, using our credit or going through a lender or anything like that. So there are deals out there that you don't have to worry about. If you have limited credit or no cash, we can certainly teach you, and Jillian will certainly teach you how you can raise that money to get this deal done. So in this particular case, we raised $300,000, didn't have to sign on any loan documents. But where, on the other hand, you might say, well, okay, so you raised $300,000. I don't have $300,000. How did you do that? Well, in this particular case, we went out to people that we know, to investors, and we showed them the numbers on this particular property and why it would be to their advantage to invest with us. And that's where I would pass it off to Jillian to create the private placement memorandum and the operating agreements in order to raise that money the right way. Because the last thing I want to do is be visiting my family through the Gray Bar Hotel windows, if you know what I mean. So Jillian, that's where you come in. Your expertise is helping people like me raise that kind of money and make sure our paperwork is done properly so we stay out of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I just want everybody out there to know that I'm not just an attorney. I'm also a real estate investor myself. As a matter of fact, before I started practicing law, I actually cut my teeth on investing and being a real estate investor and a developer. And the first things that I invested in were actually multifamily buildings in Southern California. So I feel everybody's pain out there about how to get into this or how to get started or how to raise money. I've not only helped hundreds of clients do it for their own buildings and for themselves, but also I've done it for myself. So I speak from a place where I've been where you are. If you haven't been out there raising money or investing and you want to get started and you don't know how, I've been to where you are before. So I want to tell you a couple of things that you can do today to get started with raising private money. And one of those things I want you to do as soon as you get off this webinar, besides signing up for our next event, of course, is, well, one, sign up for our next event, but two, I want you to start writing down exactly what it is you want to do. And that sounds like a business plan, right? Well, I don't want you to put a ton of heavy lifting into this. I really just want you to write down bullet points of what it is you hope to achieve, where it is you hope to invest, what it is you hope to invest in, all the who, what, where, whens, whys, hows. Just write those things down, and you will be on a great road to starting to raise private money for real estate investing. So, number one, sign up for the event. Number two, write down bullet points of what it is that you plan to do. Because when it comes down to it, that's what your investors are going to want to know. And most importantly, what your investors are going to want to know are three things. What are they investing in? How much money do they need to invest? And when are they going to get their money back? Those are three very important things to investors. So write down exactly those things, and you will be well on your way to starting to raise private money. The other thing we're going to be doing at the event this weekend is we're going to try to reset your mindset when it comes to your deals and opportunities. One thing I typically see when a new client comes into my door is that they have zero confidence when it comes to raising private money. Anthony, do you have this experience with your students?
You know, more importantly than my students, I had this with myself a few years ago.
Interesting.
So,
Tell us about that.
And well, I will, and this is the story that I impart upon my students, is that I had a partner years ago. We were actually kind of teetering around 500 or 600 units, and we couldn't seem to get any more. We were having trouble raising funds, finding money, and getting to that next level to buy our next building. And we kept going back and forth, or I should say I kept going back and forth, until finally I went to my partner, and he said, "What do you think the problem is?" And I basically said, "You know what, George, I just can't seem to find any more money. I just can't seem to find any more money." And he said, "You know what?" He said, "The first thing you need to do is stop telling yourself you can't find any more money." So, and I was like, oh my God, that's right, because there's a phrase out there that says, what you think about expands. So if I keep thinking about, I can't find any more money, guess what happens? I can't find any more money. Yeah. So it was an amazing exercise for me, because literally what I did is I turned around and I said, okay, I'm going to change it. So now what I do is I tell myself I have all the money I need to do any deal I want to get done anytime I need it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And by doing that, we literally, within the next 2 or 3 years, I think we went out and we bought, the very next year, bought a 150-unit property, then we bought a 140-unit property, then a 120-unit property, and a month ago, we just closed on 4 complexes in Indianapolis, totaling 410 units.
So, that's wonderful.
So yeah, so absolutely. So I absolutely agree with you. It's, you have to reset your mindset and what you're telling yourself. If you keep telling yourself it's difficult, it's going to be difficult. If you tell yourself it's going to be easy, it will. And I know that's, for some people, can be a little bit of a hurdle to get over, because they think, oh, I can't just tell myself it's going to be easy and it's going to be easy. It's like, you're right, because even though you're saying it, you still believe that it's not. So as you're saying that I have all the money for any deal that I want to get done and have access to all the money I need anytime I need it, you have to believe it when you say it, and it works. I mean, I'm living proof that it works, because I think I picked up, just off the quick thumb count, there was about 800 units in the last 3 years.
Wow,
so
that's
it does.
Great.
It is great. It does work. I've raised, since I've changed my own mindset, I've raised probably $3 or $4 million for different deals to get those deals done.
Well, it's not just that, but one thing I want people to really be aware of is that they want to get into real estate investing. Those folks that are watching this video right now want to get into real estate investing. What makes you think that other people don't want to get into real estate investing? I'll tell you something, though. Those other people are not going to spend the time that you're spending watching this video right now to find out about getting into real estate investing. They'd rather just write a check. So you just need to find those people who want to write the check. And I'm going to tell you right now, from my own experience, They're plentiful. They're out there. They will write you the check. If you present your idea, your concept, your real estate investing venture with confidence, you will raise the money, I promise you. And so when you come to the event, you're going to find out where to find these investors, how to speak to them, and what to say to them so that they will give you some money. That first step, though, is to write down that plan. So I want you to go out and do that tonight and get started on that. Focus on that so by the time you come to the event, you're ready with, or you at least have some partial semblance of a plan together. So once you come out of the event with all the great information we're going to be giving you there about, you know, where to find investors and how to talk to them and what the legal rules are, which are very, very important, by the way, you'll be ready to go and hit the ground running. All right, so I'm going to give you guys a quick hint on where to find investors in your own hometown, because you can find investors anywhere. In any part of this country, you can find investors, I assure you. So one place I want y'all to hang out at, or one thing I want you to do this year, just one thing, is to go to one of those charitable dinners that cost about $100 a plate or $200 a plate. Because people who have money to spend at charitable dinners, generally speaking, have money to invest. And I will speak from personal experience on this one. I went to a charitable dinner event here in Southern California, and I ended up getting seated with 4 doctors and lawyers. My entire table was doctors and lawyers. And the minute I started talking about real estate investing, their ears perked up. They wanted to know more because these doctors and lawyers were so busy with their own practices. They didn't have time to worry about real estate investing. They were looking towards somebody like myself or some of my clients who had the experience and had the time and were going through the efforts so that they could put their money into those types of opportunities. So one thing you can do for yourself this year is to go to one of those charitable dinners and just talk and meet people. Just make new friends. Tell them about what it is that you do, and I assure you they'll come seek you out later so that they can invest their hard-earned money with you. That's just one place. So work on that, work on your plan, and you'll be good to go. And if you want to hear more about what we are going to be doing and presenting, click below to sign up for our event. And if you can't come to this next event that we have going on, don't worry, we're going to have other ones. You can sign up for more. But what I want you to do is I want you to sign up for our free ebook so that you can receive not only some valuable information in the interim, but also hear about our upcoming events. So when you are able to make one, you will be able to sign up right away. We do limit the room to we don't do mega events. That's not our thing. We want to make sure people are actually receiving education and being attended to. So we do not do huge events, Anthony or myself. Anthony, do you want to talk a little bit more about that philosophy and why we limit the room?
Well, we limit the room because we want to make sure the people that come get their money's worth and they're taken care of. It gives them a chance to get their own individual personalized questions answered to the best of our ability. And if you're in a room with 500 people or 1,000 people, it's really hard to do that and give that personal touch. So it's one of the reasons I like to keep mine smaller than a lot of other people around the country, because you can, I want to under-promise and over-deliver. So I want to make sure you get your specific questions answered to the best of my ability during the time that we have at the event. So that's why I do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing is too, I want to encourage you to come out to an event because we will not hold back. We will answer all of your questions. So if you have any questions, that is your opportunity to ask us. We will be available to answer those questions for you. And also, I want to encourage you to keep coming back and checking out our website, apartmentsandmoney.com, so that if we do have another event that you want to come to, you will be aware of it. And also, we're constantly giving out free information, free tips, ebooks, webinars, things like that. So check out our website regularly, apartmentsandmoney.com. Sign up for our free ebook that we're offering now. and hopefully we'll see you at the next event. Anthony, any closing words?
Jillian, it's been great as always, and everybody, thank you very much. We'll see you at one of our upcoming events very, very soon.
Bye, everyone.